Have you ever trusted someone so completely you couldn't imagine they'd ever betray you? My name is Sarah, and I'm 32 years old. If you'd asked me 6 months ago to describe my life, I would have used words like stable, happy, and planned. I'm a planner. I plan everything, from our weekly grocery lists to our 5-year financial goals. My husband, Mark, used to joke that I had our entire lives mapped out on a color-coded spreadsheet. He wasn't wrong. I found comfort in order, in knowing what was coming next. It made me feel safe. I think that's why people saw me as the reliable one, the strong one, especially my little sister, Emily. She's 5 years younger than me, and where I am, spreadsheets and schedules, she is spontaneity and chaos. I've been taking care of her for as long as I can remember. I helped her with her homework, paid for her first car, and co-signed the lease on her first apartment. I loved her with a fierceness that felt more maternal than sisterly. She was my shadow, my best friend, and my responsibility. Mark and I had a good life. We lived in a cozy little blue house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind with big oak trees and neighbors who wave when you drive by. We'd spent 5 years turning that house into a home. Mark painted the walls my favorite shade of sage green, and I planted a garden full of roses and lavender in the backyard. It was our sanctuary. Our marriage felt just as solid. Mark was a good man, or so I believed. He was kind, funny, and he always knew how to make me laugh. Even when I was stressed about work, he was the one who would rub my feet after a long day and tell me everything was going to be okay. For the last 2 years, we'd been trying for a baby. It was the one part of my plan that wasn't working out, and it was starting to create a tiny hairline fracture in my perfect world. Every negative pregnancy test felt like a personal failure. Mark was always so supportive, holding me and saying, "It'll happen when it's meant to happen. Sarah, we have plenty of time." I held on to those words like a lifeline. Our little world consisted of the 3 of us, me, Mark, and Emily. She was always at our house. After she lost her job as a graphic designer a few months ago, she started spending most of her days with us. I was happy to have her. I thought it was good for her to not be alone, and I made sure she had everything she needed. I'd cook her favorite meals. We'd watch movies together, and Mark would help her with her resume. We were a team. I felt so lucky to have the 2 people I loved most under my roof, supporting each other. I saw their closeness as a blessing. I was so naive. I was so blind. The day my world shattered started like any other Tuesday. I came home early from work, feeling a little under the weather. I was hoping to just take a nap before Mark got home. Emily's car was in the driveway, which wasn't unusual. I walked in quietly, not wanting to disturb her if she was watching TV. The house was silent. I dropped my purse on the entryway table and headed towards our bedroom. As I got closer to the kitchen, I heard whispers. It was Mark's voice, and Emily's. I stopped, a strange feeling prickling the back of my neck. "You can't keep avoiding it," Mark was saying, his voice low and strained. "We have to tell her." "Tell her what?" "Mark." Emily's voice was sharp, panicked. "That I'm pregnant, and that her perfect husband is the father. That'll go over well. She'll hate me. She's going to find out eventually," he said. "Your body is going to change. We have to get ahead of this." I stood there, frozen in the hallway, my hand covering my mouth. The words didn't seem real. It felt like I was listening to a scene from a movie, not a conversation happening in my own kitchen. Pregnant. Her perfect husband is the father. Each word was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I backed away slowly, my legs trembling so hard I thought I would collapse. I couldn't breathe. My meticulously planned life, my safe little world, had just been obliterated by a few whispered words. I stumbled back out the front door, closing it silently behind me. I sat in my car, staring at the blue house that was no longer my home. A single, burning question took root in the center of my chest, a question that would guide everything I did from that moment on. How could they do this to me? And what on earth was I going to do now? The first few days were a blur of silent shock. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. The words were trapped in my throat, choked by a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight. I moved into the guest room, telling Mark I had a terrible flu and didn't want to get him sick. It was a flimsy excuse, but he seemed almost relieved to have the space. He and Emily treated me with a gentle, cautious kindness that was almost worse than outright cruelty. They'd bring me soup and tea, asking if I needed anything. Every look of concern from them felt like a twist of the knife. They were acting like caretakers, all while they were the source of the sickness that was rotting my life from the inside out. My biggest internal obstacle was the war raging inside my own head. One moment, I'd be filled with a white-hot rage that made me want to scream and break things. The next, I'd be drowning in a tidal wave of sorrow, replaying every happy memory and wondering how much of it was a lie. Was our whole marriage fake? Did he ever love me? And Emily? My sister? The girl I'd practically raised. The betrayal from her felt deeper, more primal. It wasn't just the affair. It was the obliteration of our entire history. Finally, after a week of living like a ghost in my own house, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the living room where they were sitting together on the couch, watching a movie. They looked so comfortable, so domestic. I turned off the TV. I know, I said. My voice was eerily calm. They both stared at me. Emily's face went pale. Mark just looked tired. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" he asked, though his eyes told me he knew exactly what I meant. "I know about the baby, Mark. I know you're the father." The confession was messy and pathetic. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-style confrontation. It was just a cascade of weak excuses and deflections. It just happened. Emily cried, tears streaming down her face. "We never meant for this to happen. We were going to tell you." Mark tried to explain it as a mistake, a moment of weakness that had turned into something more. He said he felt lost, that our struggles with fertility had put a strain on him. He was trying to make me feel responsible for his own infidelity. They both were. They painted themselves as victims of circumstance, two people who had fallen into an impossible situation. I was no longer a person who had been wronged. I was an obstacle to their new life. The first challenge I faced from the outside was their refusal to own what they'd done. But what came next? What truly broke my heart was the reaction from my family. I thought my parents would be my staunchest allies. I was wrong. I called my mom, sobbing, and told her everything. Her first reaction was shock, then anger. But then, after she spoke to Emily, her tone changed. "Sarah, honey, it's a horrible situation," she said a few days later, her voice laced with a careful, placating tone. "But there's a baby involved now, an innocent child. Emily is so scared. You've always been the strong one. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive them? For the sake of the family. For the sake of the family." Those words would become a weapon used against me again and again. My parents, my aunts, my uncles, they all saw the baby as the priority. They saw a pregnant, vulnerable Emily and a remorseful Mark. They saw me as a bitter, angry woman who was standing in the way of a solution. The stakes were escalating. It wasn't just my marriage that was gone. My entire support system was crumbling around me. I was being pressured to accept the unacceptable, to welcome my husband's child with my sister into our lives as if it were a normal, happy event. They wanted me to just step aside. My absolute lowest point, the moment I felt like everything was truly lost, came about a month later. By then, I had moved out of the house and was living in a sterile, lonely, short-term rental apartment. I was trying to start the divorce proceedings, but Mark was dragging his feet, and my own family was calling me, urging me to reconsider. One Saturday, I needed to pick up the last of my things from the house, some photo albums and personal documents I'd forgotten. I pulled up to my old street and saw them. Mark and Emily were in the front yard, the yard I had so lovingly landscaped. Mark was assembling a baby crib. A flat pack box for a dresser sat next to it. Emily was sitting on the porch steps, her hand resting on her small but visible baby bump, smiling up at him. They looked like a picture-perfect couple, building a nest for their new family in the ruins of my old one. In that moment, I felt a hopelessness so complete it was suffocating. They had won. They had my husband, my house, my family, and the baby I had so desperately wanted. I had nothing. I was utterly and completely alone. I put the car in reverse and drove away, tears blurring the image of the little blue house I would never call home again. I drove to a park and just sat there for hours, watching families play, feeling like I was on the other side of a glass wall, forever shut out from that kind of happiness. I had hit rock bottom. And it was there, in that cold, dark place, that a tiny, hard spark ignited within me. The grief was still there, but now it was mixed with something else: determination. They wanted me to forgive and forget. They wanted me to be the bigger person. Fine, I would be. But I would do it on my own terms. My revenge wasn't going to be loud and messy. It was going to be quiet, calculated, and absolute. The first thing I did was call a new lawyer, the sharpest one I could find. My revenge wasn't a single act, but a strategy. The first part was silence and distance. I stopped answering my family's calls. I blocked them on social media. I communicated with Mark only through my lawyer. I created a void where I used to be, and in that void, their narratives started to fall apart. Without me there to be the villain, the bitter wife, they were left with just themselves. A man who cheated on his wife with her sister, and a sister who betrayed the one person who always had her back. I focused on myself. I poured my energy into my work and got a promotion. I started going to therapy, which helped me untangle the feelings of guilt and inadequacy they had burdened me with. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away, friends who were horrified on my behalf and offered their unwavering support. Slowly, I was building a new life, a new foundation that had nothing to do with them. Meanwhile, I let them build their cage. Mark and Emily moved forward with their plans. Through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, I heard about their gender reveal party. It was a boy, and saw pictures of their baby shower invitations. They were trying so hard to create a story of a beautiful, unconventional love that had conquered all. They needed everyone to buy into it, to validate their choices. And the centerpiece of that validation was the upcoming baby shower, an event my mother was helping to organize. 2 weeks before the shower, my mother called me from a number I didn't recognize. "Sarah, please," she begged, "just come to the shower. Show everyone that we're still a family. It would mean the world to Emily. And that's when I knew it was time. Okay, Mom, I said, my voice calm and steady. I'll be there. The day of the baby shower was bright and sunny. I walked into my old backyard, which was now filled with pink and blue balloons and a crowd of familiar faces from my former life. When I appeared, a hush fell over the guests. Emily, glowing and very pregnant, looked shocked to see me. Mark looked deeply uncomfortable. My mother rushed over and gave me a relieved, grateful hug. I smiled politely, moved through the party, and made small talk. I let them believe I was there to wave the white flag. I let them think they had finally broken me into acceptance. After everyone had eaten, my mother stood up to make a toast. She talked about the beauty of new life and the strength of family bonds. Then, she looked directly at me. "And I especially want to thank Sarah for being here," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for showing us all what forgiveness looks like." Everyone applauded. They were all looking at me, smiling. This was my cue. I stood up, holding a small, beautifully wrapped gift box. "Thank you, Mom," I began, my voice clear and carrying across the yard. "I am here to celebrate family and new beginnings." I smiled warmly at Emily and Mark. "You two have certainly been through a lot to be together, and you deserve to start your new life without any baggage from the past." I walked over to them. I handed the gift box to Emily. "This is for you, Emily." She opened it. Inside was not a baby rattle or a pair of booties. It was an itemized invoice. "Over the last 10 years, I said, my voice never losing its pleasant tone, I've loaned you just over $17,000 for your tuition, your car deposit, your rent. I was always happy to do it. But since you're starting a new family with a new provider, I think it's only fair that you start with a clean slate. My lawyer has the official documents. You can pay me back in installments." Emily's face was ashen. The crowd was dead silent. I then turned to Mark, pulling a thick manila envelope from my purse. "And Mark," I said, handing it to him, "this is for you. These are the signed divorce papers. I've agreed to everything you wanted. You can have the house, our house. In fact, I'm giving you my half of the equity as a gift. Consider it a down payment on the next 18 years of child support you'll be paying. Because once this is signed, I am no longer your problem. But he," I said, pointing to Emily's stomach, "will be your responsibility forever." I let that hang in the air for a moment. I looked around at the stunned faces of my family and their friends. "My mother is right," I concluded, my voice ringing with a strength I never knew I possessed. "This is a new beginning. It's the beginning of my new life, free from lies and betrayal. I wish you both the life you deserve." And with that, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had resolved the central conflict not by fighting them, but by releasing them. The central question of what I would do had been answered. I would choose myself. I would choose peace. I would choose freedom. The sound of their perfect party shattering behind me was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. It's funny. When something terrible happens, you think the world is going to end, but it doesn't. The sun still comes up, the seasons still change, and you have to get out of bed. For a long time after that day, I felt like I was just going through the motions. But looking back now, I realized that every step I took, even the shaky ones, was a step away from the person I used to be, the old me. Sarah, the planner, the fixer, the eternal caretaker, was gone. She died in that hallway. listening to the two people she loved most plot a future that didn't include her. The person who walked away from that baby shower was someone new. I used to think my strength was in how much I could carry for other people. I carried my sister's financial burdens, my husband's insecurities, my family's expectations. I thought that made me strong. The betrayal taught me that true strength isn't in carrying the weight of others. It's in having the courage to put it down. My revenge wasn't about making them miserable. I realized I didn't have to. They were going to do that to each other all on their own. Their relationship was built on a foundation of deceit, and a house built on sand will always fall. The real revenge was my own healing. It was rediscovering my own worth, a worth that isn't tied to being a wife or a sister or a mother. It's just mine. I sold the house. I took a trip to Italy I'd always dreamed of, and I learned how to be alone without being lonely. I learned that forgiveness isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about taking the hook out of yourself so they can't pull you down anymore. The core lesson I learned is that you cannot control what other people do, but you can always control how you respond. You can let their betrayal define you, or you can let it refine you. I chose to be refined. I was burned down to the ground, but like a forest after a fire, I'm growing back stronger, greener, and more alive than ever before. So, I want to ask you, have you ever been through something that completely changed who you thought you were? And who did you become on the other side? I'll be reading through all of your thoughts in the comments below. This is more than just my story. It's a conversation about our shared strength, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. If this story touched you in any way, please consider giving it a like. It truly helps the video reach other people who might need to hear that they aren't alone. And if you want to hear more stories about overcoming life's biggest challenges and finding ourselves again, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thank you again for spending your time with me today. I'll see you in the next one.